Even though it's been over 20 years since 9/11, the event itself has been immortalized in pop culture, whether it be due to movies based off the tragedy or a series of memes that you'll find in dark humor compilations. Today I'm going to talk about the former, movies. 9/11 has been used as a plot point in many movies, and most of the time they're made by Hollywood, which makes sense since, after all, it is an American tragedy. However, there are movies that look at this event and its aftermath from a different point of view, and in this video I'll be discussing 3 such films. These movies show the stories of people, whether American or otherwise, who were caught in the crossfire amidst all the chaos. None of these are biopics or documentaries, but they are based or at least inspired by true events. Exploring such trauma is a risk no matter what you do, so if you're the kind of person who doesn't enjoy movies based on such events, feel free to skip them. Having said all that, let's get started.
My name is Khan, and I'm not a terrorist.
The first movie in this list is My Name is Khan. The movie follows Rizwan Khan, a man with Asperger's who moves to America after his mother's death. His younger brother is a manager at a cosmetics company, and so he gives Rizwan a job to sell the products to beauty salons. During his job, he meets Mandira, a single mother who works at one of the salons. Rizwan takes a liking to Mandira, and before too long, they're married. Since he is a Muslim and she is Hindu, it creates a rift between the brothers, but Rizwan still goes ahead and fulfills the promise he once made to his mother, the promise of having his own happy family. That very family is brought into conflict, however, when 9/11 happens. Due to the incident, Muslims and even those who look like them became outcasts suddenly, with many going as far as to being victims of hate crime. Rizwan's sister-in-law is one such person who is harassed at her job. The worst is yet to come, however, as Rizwan's son is also attacked soon after. This tragedy rips Rizwan and Mandira's family apart, shattering their once happy life. As Mandira is fighting to give her son justice, Rizwan embarks on a journey to do the same and more. Straight away, this is by far the best movie on this list, so if you end up watching any, try this one. This film reveals the harsh realities faced by Muslims in America during those times. Khan's journey across the country, driven by a simple promise to meet the president and declare, "I am not a terrorist," symbolizes the struggle of millions who suffered prejudice because of their faith. His story is a testament to the unbreakable spirit of a person who is showing us that resilience is not just about surviving, it's about staying true to oneself in the face of overwhelming odds.
आगे कोई रास्ता नहीं था तो पीछे मुड़कर देखा, पूरा शहर दिखाई दिया मुझे।
The next movie on this list is New York. While My Name is Khan shows us how one man's fate is tested, New York takes us down a darker path where the lines between justice and revenge are blurred. The movie follows Omar, a cab owner who is coerced into being an undercover FBI agent. He is reunited with his old friends, Maya and Samir, and even moves to their house for his mission. Samir is suspected to be a terrorist, and it's Omar's job to see if it's true. Given their history, Omar can't believe that his friend Samir, a man who was once so full of life, could actually be a dangerous terrorist, but he is proven wrong. Samir's descent from a charismatic, carefree friend to a cold-blooded terrorist is a gut-wrenching transformation that leaves you questioning how well do we truly know the people in our lives. We're shown the backstory of what led to this major transformation, as Samir was one of the many innocent people who was falsely arrested, questioned, and tortured for 9 months, only to be let out due to lack of evidence. Despite finally being a free man, Samir suffered from severe PTSD for quite some time, until the day he joined an actual terrorist group with the promise of revenge over the system that brought him and many others like him so much pain and trauma. Omar is conflicted and believes that Samir can be changed, that he can go back to being his older self so that he can live a proper life with his family. What follows is a heartbreaking tale of friendship turned tragic by the horrors of wrongful imprisonment and torture. Samir, once a cheerful man, is now a shell of his former self, driven by a thirst for revenge that ultimately leads to his downfall. The story points out how even a normal, happy-go-lucky man can break when injustice is thrown their way.
इन सबको टेररिस्ट आपने बनाया। क्यों नहीं बताया मुझे कि आप लोगों ने समीर को डिटेंशन सेंटर में रखा था 9 महीनों तक?
मैं नहीं चाहता था कि तुम समीर से मिलो तो उसे हमदर्दी जताने लगो। because nothing justifies terrorism.
This is a conflicting film since, as a fan of revenge stories, a part of me actually wanted Samir to take revenge, as I can't blame him for holding a grudge. Yet at the same time, there was nothing in his power that he could have done to target the right people responsible. So it would have been best if he had just tried to move on. It's easier said than done, but it's still far better than the alternative, where his decisions pull him deeper into the world of violence and extremism, where every choice he makes not only endangers his life, but also shatters the lives of those around him.
ये मत भूलो कि तुम और हम यहाँ पर इमिग्रेंट्स की तरह आए थे और हमें यहाँ पर अपनी जगह मिली है, अपनी आज़ादी मिली है। और उसी आजादी को बचाने के लिए मैं सब कुछ कर रहा हूँ। हाँ, इस मुल्क ने बहुत सारी गलतियां की हैं और हमें उन गलतियों की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेनी चाहिए, लेकिन इस मुल्क की बहुत सारी अच्छाइयां हैं जो हमको नहीं भूलना चाहिए।
The final film I'm going to talk about is Qurban. As we move from personal struggles to the broader conflict, Qurban immerses us into the terrifying world of terrorism itself, showing us what happens when faith and vengeance collide. The story follows Avantika, a newly married college professor who moves to America with her husband. As they settle into their new home, they are invited to a dinner by their neighbors. There is an uneasy feeling in the air that is noticeable, but she doesn't think much of it until the night she witnesses one of the neighbors physically abusing his wife. The next day onwards, that wife is nowhere to be seen. Curiosity gets the best of her and Avantika goes to the neighbor's house, only to discover the fact that her neighbors are actually terrorists who plan on bombing a civilian flight. She is chased back to her house, and this is where she gets the biggest shock of her life. Not only is her own husband one of the terrorists, he also planned everything. He married her knowing that she would soon move to America so that he could join her without raising any suspicions. He even tricked her into believing that getting this very house was her choice, and when she claimed she'll call the cops, he threatened to kill her and her father back in India. For her and her baby's life, she had to stay quiet and obedient. While all this is happening, a journalist is looking into the bombing of a flight, the very flight Avantika found out about. That journalist finds a connection between the bombings and Avantika's family, so he decides to investigate. He finds her husband and maneuvers his way into his circle by attending one of his classes and leaving quite an impact. The rest of the story is him working alongside with Avantika to stop these terrorists from bombing yet another public place. Only they hadn't realized how much higher the stakes were soon about to get.
Appa, Appa, मेरी बात सुनो. Appa, Appa.
You may have noticed already that unlike the first two films, Qurban doesn't make 9/11 a central plot point in the character's journey. Instead, it delves into the minds of those who live in the aftermath. Qurban explores the lingering shadows of 9/11, focusing on the terrorists themselves and their motivations sometime after the towers fell. Unlike the previous two that focused mostly on civilians, this one focuses on actual terrorists. Sure, New York did have a terrorist in Samir, but he was relatively new at it and only wanted to target the FBI, while in Qurban, they have been terrorists for a lot longer and want to attack everything and anything they can to hurt America and its citizens. This movie focuses more on their point of view and why they're doing it. Their reasoning is that since America attacked and killed many of their people, they want to take revenge. There's a particular scene in Qurban that stands out for its raw intensity. It perfectly encapsulates the film's central conflict, showing how deeply ingrained beliefs can drive people to justify even the most horrific actions.
If Islam truly is a religion that preaches peace, then how come the world's most troubled spots, the West Bank, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, they're all plagued with Islamic terrorism?
Well, that depends on your definition of terrorism. Some might argue that the US invasions of countries like Iraq and Afghanistan are also acts of terrorism.
No, those were acts of war to get rid of despotic regimes.
Or a means of getting at a country's oil.
Conspiracy theories.
Well,
May I?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Reza.
Mr. Khan is right. I mean, if we're talking about terrorists, the world's biggest terrorists are the white superpowers.
Come on now.
No, really, stop and think about it.
Explain 9/11.
Okay. Do you know how many people died in the Twin Towers strike?
Around 3,000.
And do you have any idea how many people died in the bombing of Afghanistan? Take a wild guess. More than 15,000 people died. And that's just conservative figures. About 50,000 tons of explosives were dropped on innocent civilians. Men, women, children.
Yeah, but that was because of the Taliban.
Now that you brought it up, did you know that the Taliban was a creation of the CIA to fight the Russians?
Whatever. They were still harboring terrorists.
Yeah, right. Terrorists that were never found. Just like the weapons of mass destruction that were never found in Iraq. Do you want to get into the death toll in Iraq? 500,000 civilians and counting. And what do Britain and America say when they don't find these weapons? It's simple. They just say sorry and still refuse to relinquish control of these countries.
What are you trying to say?
What I'm trying to say is that just because you're American, wear a fancy suit, and call yourself the president, doesn't make you any less of a terrorist. I'm saying that if you don't stop meddling in other people's countries, you will face a backlash.
This scene perfectly summarizes the conflict between these two groups and why it's even there. It gives a clear picture into the mind of these terrorists, and while it is hard to sympathize with them, it gets easier to at least understand where they're coming from. Don't get me wrong, they're still terrible, bloodthirsty psychopaths using God's name to do evil. But in this movie, you see how they use some mental gymnastics to convince themselves and their followers into believing that they're actually in the right. It also doesn't help that the Americans in this scene can't come up with a decent argument in defense of their own country's actions. And in case you're wondering, there is an American who asks the generic question of why stay at a country if you're suffering, as if that's in any way a smart remark, and she is just as easily left speechless.
If Muslims like you feel that way, then why don't you get out of our country?
We will. As soon as you promise to leave ours.
Despite believing in the same God, the difference in their mentality is properly showcased in this intense scene as the journalist's cover is blown and he's about to get killed.
मजा जो आता है तुम लोगों को जान लेने में, अल्लाह का काम, जिहाद, बहाने से। एक मिनट के लिए भी ये मत सोचना कि ये अल्लाह का काम है, क्योंकि अल्लाह के काम में कभी किसी मासूम की जान नहीं जाती। बॉम्ब जब भी फटते हैं ना, सिर्फ मासूम मरते हैं।
In the end, these films don't just tell stories, they challenge us to reflect on the real world consequences of hate, fear, and revenge. One of the best things about these movies is that they're not one-sided. These films masterfully depict both sides of the conflict, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truth that good or evil isn't exclusive to any single race, religion, or bloodline, but that it's often shaped by the individual's own experiences and choices. Like Rizwan's mother once said, there are good people and then there are bad people, and we as audience get to see that from both perspectives. There are bad cops who torture Samir, but there are also bad Muslims who use Samir's trauma for their own gain by luring him in and many people like him into their terrorist organization. Similarly, in My Name is Khan, there were good Muslims like Rizwan's family who were just normal people living their lives and doing their jobs. Then there were bad Muslims like that doctor and his following at one of the mosques Rizwan stays at. One of them even tries to kill Rizwan later on in the movie. And finally, there is Qurban, where the person trying to bomb a place and the person trying to stop the bomb while also risking his own life are both Muslims. It's a nuanced portrayal, avoiding easy answers and instead exploring the grey areas of morality. All three major characters in each movie face injustices, but they deal with it in different ways. Rizwan only wants peace, despite of the bad things that happen to him.
और हमारे घर में आपके लिए कोई जगह नहीं होगी। वो हिंदू है भाई, हिंदू, और बहुत फर्क है उनमें और हमें, समझे आप?
नहीं, कोई फर्क नहीं। अच्छे इंसान, बुरे इंसान, और कोई फर्क नहीं।
भाई अंदर आ जाओ प्लीज।
Samir wants revenge as he only targets the FBI headquarters.
मेरी लड़ाई सिर्फ FBI के साथ है, ताकि फिर कभी ये साले जिस पे भी चाहे टेररिस्ट का लेबल नहीं लगा सके।
And then there are the characters in Qurban who are mostly just terrorists. But even then, we are hinted at their motives and why they are the way they are.
और मेरा बच्चा, रोज मरते बच्चे इराक में, अफगानिस्तान में, इन गोरों की तेल की प्यास बुझाने के लिए। ओए शुक्र करो खुदा का, तुम्हारी औलाद को शहादत नसीब होगी।
Cinema can be a powerful tool to explore trauma, revenge, and ultimately the human capacity for both destruction and redemption. It's stated loud and clear that the theme is to move on no matter what. Those who are stuck in the past, no matter how unjust, are the ones who suffer most, unwillingly and innocently at first, but willingly and deservingly by the end.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger.
अरे अंधे हैं सब गधेड़े अंग्रेज, गोरे साले। अरे गांधी बाबा के गांव का गुजराती और ओसामा जैसा गुंडा, और समझ में नहीं आता तेरे को?
Anger leads to hate.
No Muslim allowed.
Hate leads to suffering.
अरे अरे तू घबरा नहीं, तू इधर आ, इधर वापस। अरे उधर डेंजर है, तू इधर आना है भाई।
Vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them.
My name is Khan, and I'm not a terrorist.
I'm done letting it consume me.
To be a part of the history. And mind you, my name is Jitesh and I'm not a terrorist.
Thank you everyone for watching, and this time, instead of asking you all to like, share, subscribe or comment, I'm going to end the video in the lesson I want you to take from this.
Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Do not be too eager to deal out death and judgment.
That's it for now, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.